Ready to go? Hey, good afternoon and welcome to the EThOs Power Lunch. So glad that you are here. I see a lot of familiar faces, so some folks have been here to the Power Lunch before, but who has never been to the Power Lunch before? Brand new. So glad that you signed up and are here today. I'm sure the food is excellent and the presentation is too today. So this is a good combination of networking with professionals and also leadership development. We have a great program for you today. I've partnered with some of my co-leadership teachers and facilitators, including Carrie Martin, Darla Harms is here today, and then our presenter today, Brooke Jacobs. And so I want to say thank you to our co-sponsors for making this possible, and that includes SI Now and the Small Business Development Center over at over at Carbondale. And I also want to thank Union Street Arts because Luke O'Neill is offering our live stream here today. And we did have 1,000 people join our live stream last month. We do this the third Thursday of every month. And then we also want to thank the Little Nashville Cafe for making this possible and allowing us to bring the Lunch and Learn program back downtown here. And so that's Shay and Matt Moore. Matt was our chef and Shay's the manager here today. So if you see them behind the bar or come around, thank them for making this available today. And I think Luke's going to turn down our music for us. Thank you. Otherwise, I'll have to sing along, and you don't want to hear that at all. Hey, I do want to draw your attention to some things that we have coming up through EThOs, a small business incubator and co-working spaces, training and development. And there are some flyers on your table that you can take with you or even take a photo of so you can remember to register for these events. Our next workshop is Handbook Health Check, ensuring your policies stay compliant, and that's taught by Summer Vanderbilt with Higher Level. So if you have employees, but you don't have a handbook for the employees, or maybe you've not updated your handbook in several years, there are a lot of updates that come along to make the handbook compliant. So it's a 1-hour workshop. It's going to be free, and it's going to be on Thursday, 1 week from today, over here at EThOs from 11 to noon. So you can go online and register for that. And then the next workshop will be the week after that in 2 weeks. It is how to properly hire, counsel, and terminate employees. And that's presented by our own Martin Parsons. Martin is here. He's with the Legal Advocacy Headquarters. He's one of our core teachers, and he does a great job in helping you figure out how to legally do the business or the nonprofit that you do so well. And so that's going to be on Tuesday, April 29th. It's from noon to 1, again, over here at EThOs, and you can go online and register for these. We have a small conference room over at EThOs. We're building the place out, so we're going to have much bigger space. But because we have limited seating, we need you to register. It is free, but you just need to go to ethosmarion.org/events in order to register for the events. We have a wonderful presenter for you today. It's Dr. Brooke Jacobs. And Dr. Brooke Jacobs is founder of Delve Health Consulting. They do professional development and training. They do organizational and program health services for organizations and also clinical support services. We had her last year for the first time for one of our luncheon programs over here at Cocopelli. It was an outstanding lesson and real life teaching how you can build a better organization that is wise and healthy and all of those things too. So I want to introduce you to Dr. Brooke Jacobs.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to try, I think, without the microphone.
Can you hear, Dr. Brooke?
No. So
No.
I'll have to hover maybe and scoot
And you can pick it up too if you want to.
Okay,
You
I'm
can
going
carry
to
it around.
scoot it a little bit because I talk with my hands too much to hold a
There you
microphone,
go.
I think.
That'll work.
So is that okay? Can you guys hear that? All right. And I'll have to get used to these lights. I like this. This is wonderful. Well, thank you, Russ, and thank you to EThOs for having me. I'm really excited to see a great crowd and then to our live stream, too. I'm happy to be here. My mission is to connect with people who are doing the hard work and to help support them do the hard work. So a little bit about me and my background before we dive into the topic at hand. So again, I'm a clinical psychologist and the owner of Delve Health Consulting. I'm an Southern Illinois native, and I started my work in the nonprofit field, and during that time, I started noticing my colleagues, the case managers, the directors, the supervisors, the advocates, the burnout rate was just through the roof for these folks. And so through my time in leadership in those programs, I started to see just the need for speaking to the individuals who are doing this work. And so through my training as under a systems psychologist, I started to learn how the health of the organization can really help or hinder our employees and how they do the work. So then COVID hit and our whole culture shifted, and it wasn't just our advocates and our case managers. We were looking with nurses and physicians and bankers and anybody who had a public-facing job or anybody who was in the field was stressed, and burnout became our buzzword, right? And so during that time, we really started to develop ways at looking at supporting the individuals to do the hard work without feeling like they had to be a martyr, like they have to either give up their entire selves to their job, to their career, or they had to go and change to a career that wasn't fulfilling for them just to make the ends meet at the end of the month. And I saw that with psychologists quitting to go work in any kind of service that they could do that wasn't as stressful and heavy for them. So my goal at Delve and with my company is, again, to help the people who want to do the hard work to do it without exhausting themselves, without having to give up this other part of them that is their family, that's their social life, that is all of the other things, right? And I see head nods, so people are like, this is a hard thing. We hear work-life balance these days, right, of how do I make this work? And I haven't run into a business owner who says, I don't want to make that work, right? All of the business owners who I talk to say, of course I want my employees to be happy, but my bottom line matters too, right? And so how do I do both things? And there is a way to navigate that world. And looking into organizational culture and organizational health is where we start that. So just like in clinical psychology, the health of an individual takes a lot of things working together to make things go smoothly. The health of an organization has the same needs. There's lots of inner working parts that really need to come together to make the organization work and to make it a healthy organization. So when you guys think of organizational health and psychological safety, what words come to mind? Anybody want to shout out some answers? Listening. Yep. What other pieces? Culture. Yep. Communication. We're going to talk about communication for sure. Listening.
Stability.
What is it?
Stability. Something that's stable.
Stability. Yes, definitely. When we feel unstable, we do not feel safe in our positions, right? These are really good words. You guys have been in this field, I can tell. Sometimes when I come up as a clinical psychologist and then talking about psychological safety, I get a lot of people who are going to go into mental health concerns, anxiety, suicidality, things like that. And that's an aspect of it. But what we really are talking about today is how the business runs. So I want to give you an example that we'll kind of use throughout our time today of how what I do actually plays out in the field, because a lot of people also think psychological safety and organizational culture is this like intangible thing. It can't be measured, or some people think it's fluff stuff, right? They're going to come in and make me do yoga and breathe, and I don't want to do that. I get it. I don't do yoga. And so I really like to speak to the actions that fall behind this. So I'm going to give you an example of a task that I worked on to kind of use as an example throughout our time together. So I came to an organization and they said, we can't figure out if we need more positions, if we need less positions, who needs to be doing what jobs. And we're just stressed because we've tried every different way. These people have been in this department and this person's been in this department. And people are telling us that there's too much work to be done. And then when we hire new people, it's still too much work. So how is this working? Help us figure this out. And so through my time there consulting with them, we had an an individual who we started noticing maybe wasn't pulling his weight. We'll call him Steve. So the supervisor started noticing Steve was late for meetings. He didn't seem to be doing his work. And so they ended up terminating him. The boss at the next month was starting to do some of her reports and noticed that she had the information that Steve usually gives her. It was uploaded on the portal, and she was able to do some information, and she was scratching her head, and she called me, and she was like, I don't understand how his information is here. Like, where's this stuff coming from? So we figured out that another employee, Sharon, we'll call her, Sharon was completing his tasks, right? How many of you have done somebody else's work for them at some point in the, yep. And so Sharon says, I needed Steve's work to get my reports done. He never had his stuff done. For me to get my stuff done, I just went ahead and did his stuff, right? You see the nod, yes. We've all experienced this or had somebody, a coworker who's experienced it. So Steve's gone. Sharon's here, who says, I've been doing his work. What do you think the responses from the leadership was? I was sitting at a table with 4 of the directors there. What do you do in that situation? What's typical response, you think? What's Steve been doing? Exactly. There were some cheers of, we did the right thing by letting Steve go, right? Yep. What else? What do you think some of the discussion points were there at the table? Huh? Thanks and keep doing Steve's job, right? Yep. What else? One of the first questions I heard was, why didn't she tell us? Right? What do you think the answer to that is? Scared. Yep. And so right then, I knew we were talking about psychological safety. If we get to a point where we're asking, why didn't somebody do something, say something, we're talking about psychological safety at that point. And so one of the bosses was mad. I can't believe she didn't tell us. She had plenty of time to tell us. Why didn't she tell us? We could have done something sooner. We could have let him go sooner, all of these things, right? What do you think would have happened if we went and told Sharon that? Why didn't you tell us? You could have told us. What do you think she said?
Well, she probably would have been defensive.
Yeah. Yep. And so one of the bosses did ask her, why didn't you tell us? And her answer was, I did. Yep. She said, I thought I told my supervisor. I told her I didn't have what I needed to do my reports. And the boss thought about it, and her supervisor was like, well, we kind of talked about it, but it wasn't blatant like that. It wasn't written on the wall, so who said listening before about culture, right? And so we start thinking, where are our active listening skills of somebody doesn't have what they need to do their job, what are we doing about it, right? And so this all snowballed into this big piece. What do you think the healthiest solution was at the end of the day for Sharon, for the business, for the psychological safety, and the company culture? What do you think our end goal was, or end response? Any ideas? Somebody said it earlier. You want to keep doing this work, right? The agency said, guess what, Sharon? How is this going for you? You've been doing it now. How long have you been doing it? She said months, right? How long have you been doing it? Can you keep it up? And she was like, yeah, really. I'm already in the system. I'm already doing the things. And it takes me maybe an hour longer to do my report when I do his as well. Okay, if you think you can sustain it, do you think you could do this one other task that Steve was doing? And we want to back pay you for the work that you've been doing. We want to give you a raise for what you will be doing. And guess what this does for our company? It helps us to not pay all the benefits, all of the employee package that we needed to pay for Steve. So we can give you this raise, and we still have money left over for some clerical work and some supportive work. What can we take off of your plate that could be put to somebody else? And how do we navigate that? Who has had experiences like that before? Yeah. Why? Right? Why do we not do that kind of as organizations? If our intention is to have somebody communicate with us, to keep that floor open and to be honest and transparent in our communication, if he's not working here anymore, we're saving money. Everybody knows that. Why not bring that to the conversation and talk about how that would look? So I use that example as a means to communicate that there's always all of these different options on the table, and we get so routine in our pieces of, I need to know why she didn't tell me, because that's me focused, right? I need to know why she didn't talk to me, and then I need to know what to do next to get this position filled so you're not doing this task anymore. Because that's the status quo, that's what we've been doing, instead of coming with curiosity of what does this look like for you day to day, and money matters at the end of the day, so let us help compensate you for your work. So when we talk about psychological safety, we're talking about the understanding of what people are giving to the job, and then the kind of humanity end of it from leadership, right? And we're going to hear I bet some really great points from Darla next time about how to walk that out in leadership, and how to really live that, and then how to write it down in policies, right? And how that looks to say, we're actually going to write it on paper and we're going to walk it out. So you guys have some handouts in front of you from me. So this is going to go over some of the information, a little bit about why culture matters. And it is this invisible framework. You're not going up, and it's not the physical walls of our facility. It's not the actual people who are working there. It is the culture, right? And we have culture within our communities, within our families, within our businesses, and they're there whether we pay attention to them or not, right? And so it's our encouragement to start to pay attention to them. So we use the analogy a lot in my work of this idea of a bridge. So the services that you offer as an agency are the bridge. The services are products. And so you're driving your cars across the road that is the bridge. You're getting the things done, you're doing the service, you're delivering the product. It takes employees to do that most of the time, whether it's you or 50 other employees driving on the road. When we create a business, just like when I created my business, I started really defining the actual road on the bridge. What services do I do? What don't I do? How much do I charge? What does this look like? And start to really focus on that. We spend a lot of time with strategic plans focusing on the actual road. And then we create the bridge that is under it. Again, whether we intend to or not, something has to hold that up. So we talk about the what we do is the actual road, and the how we do it are the pillars of the bridge. So how we connect with somebody after an employee was found out to not be doing their job. How do we terminate somebody? How do we celebrate birthdays? How do we respect time off? How do we communicate after hours? That stuff matters, right? It's the stuff that gets talked about when we're really talking about work, right? We talk about how things made us feel. And so there's different pillars. There's lots of different things that can make up a company culture. I've included 5 on here to talk about a little bit, but the main one we're going to talk about is this psychological safety. And so psychological safety, from its definition by Dr. Edmondson from Harvard University, I think she coined it in the late 90s, is this idea of an absence of interpersonal fear. So it's this idea that I can speak my mind about work things in the workplace without the fear of harsh judgment, being shut down immediately, being criticized. What it doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that everybody's happy all the time at work or everybody just says yes to everybody's idea. That is not the thing, right? I see organizations swing the pendulum way too far over here. that's that critical feedback and boundaries pieces that are needed there. So I'm always really cognizant of making sure these other pieces are talked about when we're talking about psychological safety. So it actually is a part of psychological safety. Have you guys heard that analogy of the pilot driving or flying the airplane? If you are on an airplane, they use it for parenting a lot of the times, which organizations kind of go hand in hand with parenting skills sometimes. So if you're flying on a plane and the pilot comes up and says, guess what, guys, we have rough weather ahead. Not really sure what to do about it. You guys want to take a poll? Who wants to face it head on and who wants to turn around? What do you guys feel like in the airplane? Turn around? I don't know. You're the pilot, right? I'm not a weather person. I'm not a pilot. I don't know what, please, you tell us, right? We want people who are in authority to embody their authority. So psychological safety does not mean giving up your authority, because it is true psychological safety when people do embody their authority, just like parents should, right? And so the same thing happens if the pilot comes on and says, hey, we're turning around. What's everybody going to do? Are you guys happy if your plane gets delayed and turned around? We grumble. We all the things, right? You're going to hear about it. But the alternative, if we had the alternative, we don't want that option, right? And so there's going to be times that you hear grumblings, that you hear the things. And so, again, it doesn't mean that psychological safety means everybody's happy all the time either. So it's really important to have our bookends there. So what is important is that somebody on the plane could feel like they could say, but I really have somewhere to go. Great. And I want you to get there safely by driving or by getting on another flight when we land at this other airport, right? How can I help you once we land? Because we are landing. We're not going head on into this storm, right? So this idea of how we communicate to reduce fear is really important, and active listening is one of those first steps. I have the Southern Illinois allergies too, so thank you for bearing with me. So communication is this daily vehicle of our culture and of psychological safety. And if our communication really becomes guarded and we're scared to say it twice that Steve isn't doing his job, then trust starts to erode, right? Or if our communication is really reactive, so why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come here sooner? Those start to think, trust starts to erode, right? I tell the same thing to parents who come and work with me when they say, my teenager didn't tell me these things were going on, that they were failing. There was a sense that it was going to be really hard to tell the truth right then, right? And so our reaction when they tell us the truth doesn't mean that they don't have consequences, but my favorite thing for leaders, for supervisors, for parents, is to have a statement, something like, thanks for telling me. And thanks for telling me, and there's consequences. Thanks for telling me, and we're going to get through this together. Sometimes just that simple, I hear you, thank you, I really heard what you're saying, he's not doing his job, how can I help? That can start to open that. It just keeps that thread of communication alive. So as we kind of move forward, there's lots of statistics out there about what psychological safety does for actual culture and productivity. Some of the numbers that I was able to find were when a strong focus is on company culture, the average turnover rate was 14%, and with a low focus, turnover rate was 48%. That was in 2014. That has shifted immensely. How many of you guys know people who would say, if I'm not happy here, I'm out? And we've talk a lot about generational gaps and just culture gaps, sometimes about leaving a workplace before you have something else lined up. That's happening now. If people aren't satisfied, don't feel heard, don't feel supported, they're leaving, right? And so if we want our turnover rates to be low, which we do, we have to focus on this. Psychological safety leads to a 40% reduction in turnover, and then we know that engaged employees obviously are producing more, and the productivity is actually there. The feedback that I got after Sharon, I think that was her name, right? Sharon had that new position title. The productivity went through the roof. They developed a new department around her and around the services that she was providing, because they said, we see what you can do and we want to compensate you for it and help you do it. So the idea that we have staff who can do the job and can do it well, and we just need to hear how that's working for them and what that looks like, is a really great thing when you start to do that, and psychological safety really becomes that way of life within the agency. So I'm going to try to write on the whiteboard and talk to you a little bit about communication style. So I talked a little bit about this idea of bookends. So I've seen this written out a lot of ways. Are you guys familiar with Simon Sinek? Know some of his work? So he has a graph that he'll use that talks about trust and skills. And he talks about these quadrants that if you're low in skills and low in trust, nobody's really wanting to hang out or have you on their team, right? We get into areas where these people who are really high in skill but are low in trust, sometimes these are the people who get promoted, right? Because we're so skills focused, and if we're not focused on culture and trust, we will promote these people time and time again. And when you go into a workplace, he'll say, the way I can find that person is by asking who's the jerk, right? Who's the jerk that he uses different words, but who's the jerk that gets stuff done, right? And it's this guy. They step on people to get the thing done. They get the job done no matter what. And that is a company culture, right? It was kind of Sharon's motto. She said, you know what, I spoke up once. My motto is get the job done, and so I'm just going to get it done, even if that means doing somebody else's job. And so she had embraced that culture at the workplace, even though her bosses did not want that to be the case, right? So we have these people down here who aren't that skilled. They haven't gone to Darla's leadership training, right? They have high trust, though. These are the people that you go to one, gossip, right, about things in the workplace. But these are the people you go to when your computer isn't working and they're not even in the IT department. It's the people you go to when you have had a bad day and you just want somebody to say, I'm here. It's somebody who you want to go have lunch with during lunchtime. And these are the people that if we actually promote them, they actually kind of will run the system better, but then our management skills are down because the skills aren't there. We want people here, of course, but that's hard to find. But the way we prioritize it is this would be number one for a promotion, but this would be number two. Not this, right? And so I have to talk to leaders in thinking through about how to measure people's trust, right? We rolled out some changes in an organization. We do change management services. And we didn't want everybody's buy-in. We knew we couldn't get everybody's buy-in. The people who we got their buy-in were these people. It was the receptionist who had all the information for everybody. It was one of the afternoon janitors who was there in people's offices talking to people. And it was one of the people in IT who was also in people's offices. And when we got those people on board, they started communicating the change in a positive way, and it got our team on board much quicker than sitting around with our management and our middle management team saying, roll this out, because we didn't have buy-in from them yet. So we talked about how to get communication through the agency. Sometimes we have to use these skills. One of the other ways that we think about this. And I do this a lot with a lot of women's groups, because we talk about how to be a strong leader, especially from this point of view, and how hard it can be sometimes for women. And so it's a different quadrant, but really similar in this idea of assertiveness and warmth. And so what I see a lot of women supervisors, but even male supervisors in a lot of certain fields, they will give up their assertiveness to just be warm, because they think that's psychological safety, right? And so if we go back to the idea of the pilot and not embodying what we really have authority over, that doesn't feel good to the employee in the moment, right? It doesn't feel like it feels like somebody's there for me, but not backing it up with actions, right? And so that's our paper tiger, that thanks for the kind words, but what about that paycheck? What about back paying me for all my services, right? That's assertive and warm. And so then I'll see some people over here who say, I want to run just by being assertive, right? And the warmth is not there. And we also know these are our kind of jerks as well, right? I don't care that you have XYZ going on. You have to be here. This is really negative for our agencies who say that they are family cultures. You hear that so much, that we want to be a culture that is familial, that is there for each other. We throw birthday parties for everybody at the agency. They have, I see some people, they come to, we get them presents until they ask for time off. You can take the time off, but get the task done, however you need to get that done, right? And so it's only family when it's convenient for them. And so I talk to agencies a lot about how are you going to navigate being family all the time, or do you want to pull back on some of the warm family stuff to be this kind of sweet spot up here of assertive and warm. And so this is not a teeter-totter, right? You can't just be assertive or warm. It can be, I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm really sorry these things are going on. And how can I help you get the task done? Because we have to have this done by X, Y, and Z. How are we going to navigate this together? And so that's some of that coming with curiosity of, we have a problem and we have to fix it. And so I'm going to help make sure we have it figured out. And I still really understand that you may need some extra help here. You may need some extra guidance here. I was trying to think of some ways that plays out at times. I just forgot my warmth. I misspelled that. Yeah. And so ways that we can really communicate this is navigating that that understanding of what the task is. If we don't understand what the task at hand is that it's seeing the individual in front of us while still understanding the bottom line, then we've lost this idea of psychological safety coming into the workplace. And so we really have to communicate with our staff in a way that says, I see you. This changed with COVID, right? We are different places. How many of you guys have either different locations or are somewhat remote at all? Is everybody back to in-person? No, some people are remote. Yep. And so this idea has changed somewhat because it's hard to be warm and assertive and understanding over emails. And you do not have to use emojis to do it, right? You don't have to just fill your emails with emojis. But we were talking about some soft skills earlier, right? This idea of understanding when to pick up the phone matters. When to send the text matters. When to send the email matters. So if you are not spending time and thinking about these things, how you actually run your business, you are missing a whole avenue of your strategic plan, and your road is eventually not going to be supported by anything. You are going to have toxicity in the workplace. You're going to have backbiting. You're going to end up having a bad name in the community, maybe even because of it, because people are leaving so often, and then going and telling their horror stories, right? And it's so interesting to me when I go into agencies and CEOs and owners say, our culture is great. And then I talk to middle management at events and places, and they're like, please come and talk to us. Please come to our agency and talk to these people. And so it shows me that there is a disconnect, not because the intention is ill, but because there's not the time given to reflect on it. And so then I hear, I don't have time to do this, right? I only have time to do the road. And I say, okay, if that's all the time you have, then you only have that road temporarily. It's kind of the end point. It will only be there until those pillars crumble, until it truly gives way and you can't sustain anymore. And so really recognizing the take-home messages. I gave you guys some kind of pieces here at the end of noticing your bridge within your agency. What are our pillars here that we have, and where are our strengths? Do we have really open and clear communication? One of the biggest things that I see is that top-down communication. Leaders really have a hard time of understanding how much information to give, when to give it, and then how that gets communicated to the, especially if there is middle management, how that gets delivered to the direct service staff. And middle management in those situations get to the point where they're throwing the agency under the bus, right? They're talking to their direct service staff and saying, I didn't know that that was a new policy, or I didn't know another supervisor does it this way, but I don't approve time off when it's only this way. And then, right, we start to spiral out of control. And so clear communication of expectations has to be present when psychological safety is our goal. And so what are we doing to build psychological safety? Am I getting in my own way? Are our policies getting in our own way? A lot of us already work within systems that are broken, mental health field, right? That's broken enough than to not have my own businesses, policies and procedures just add on top of that to be an additional barrier to open, honest, and effective communication. And so really analyzing those to make sure that they're not getting in your way of, oh, my hands are tied, we have zero tolerance on these things. You're the boss, right? Or you're a manager, you're a leader who has a voice, so embody that, right? That's what people say when they leave those rooms is, who wrote those policies? And it's you, right? Or it's the leader. So I encourage you to choose one of these pillars to reflect on this week, or go back and talk with your teammates or your boss about how are we doing our work, because I don't think we're doing it a way that is transparent or open or honest in our communication. And my first point for everybody is to start listening and responding with curiosity, right? It's free and it's powerful. To listen and say, tell me more. I don't understand what you mean when you say you don't have what you need. I don't understand what you mean by you didn't get the calendar invite on Outlook. Let's sit down at your computer and look at this. Let's figure out the problem rather than, I see in supervision a lot, I'm going to write that down and get back to you next week on it. Figure it out in the time you have, right? And so actively listening and being curious about how can I help? If you were able to come up with a solution, what would it be? What do you think some alternatives are? What do you think is getting in the way of the solution you want? And if you start to do that, you will start to hear more collaboration. You'll start to hear more griping and collaboration, and we want that. That's a positive thing when people are speaking their mind. That means we have some psychological safety. And then we need to listen to what they're griping about. Is it something that is tangible and we can change and modify, or is it something that is, you're frustrated because the plane has to land and we have to do this, and that's okay? Or is it something that we can really navigate? So I really encourage you guys to take hold of this and recognize that psychological safety, organizational health is everybody's responsibility, right? You are responsible for your own culture. It is not just the responsibilities of our leaders in the organization, but it's everybody's who is walking around and wearing the name tag or wearing the shirt with our logo on it. I also see that a lot from direct service staff who will say, nope, I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to go and be the gossiper and be these things, instead of saying, no, I'm going to take this on as some ownership here. So don't imagine that psychological safety and organizational culture is just fluff anymore. There's some real actions you can take, and starting to look at those pieces are really important on a day-to-day basis. Do you guys have any questions for me? Thoughts? Yes?
Okay, how do we approach this? I hear the word trigger.
Yes, yes.
So it seems like it's very difficult to say anything, and people are like, well, I'm triggered by you. And well, your triggers aren't necessarily, I would say it.
Yes, yes.
I'm taking it, though.
Of course.
You know, like,
Yep.
your triggers are your responsibility. Like,
Yes.
Are they triggered, or how much of this is ego, fight, flight, or freeze?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it just seems like that word keeps being thrown out, and I don't know if people really understand what it is.
Yes, and so this happens a lot in the mental health field. Is pretty used to our words then being culturalized of, I'm having a panic attack when it's not the definition of a panic attack. I'm triggered. This is triggering a PTSD response in me. These responses now, and burnout was used. I'm burned out, and you keep asking me to do the same thing. Well, it's your job description, right? That's why we're asking. So coming again from this, I could tell when other people have had the similar conversations that I have. So one is addressing it really assertively of, you keep using this word, triggered, and when I think of that word, I think of triggering mental health concerns, and that is not something that we can navigate right here. And so we have EAP, we have these things. If you're using it in this way of, it's really frustrating to you, I want to make sure, help me learn more about what you mean by triggered. It's making you mad, it's pissing you off, right? If that is the case, people use boundaries the same way. This is my boundary. You can't do this and this. You can have a boundary, and the community, the culture will respect those until it comes out of line with the job description, right? And so one is coming at it with curiosity, and then two is, how do you see a solution? Because compromising means we're both satisfied at the end of this. And so I'm hearing over and over again, you're triggered, we're crossing your boundaries. Part of me is wondering if this is the position for you. If this isn't, do you want to look at other positions here? Do you want to look at, because I had one person who said, they keep calling me at night, and I said, you are the nighttime on-call person. It's in the title. I said, you get a stipend for it? You get these things? And they said, I can't do that anymore. And I said, oh, it's really sounding like you are in a job that is outside of your kind of value system, or it's not the season of your life for this right now. You got young kiddos, all of these things, whatever that looks like. I can't change that people call you at night when you're the nighttime on-call person. What do you see as the solution? I can't do this job anymore. Okay.
Are you really that nice when you say it?
I am at heart a smart aleck. And so it took me a long time to come in line with my value system. I honestly had a progression. When I got my doctorate, I thought, I have to be the psychologist. I have to talk in yoga speak. I have to do this stuff. I have to be super professional. And then I started teaching this stuff about being in line with your values, and I was like, I'm a cut up. I'm a smart aleck. I'm going to start living that way. Yes, at home it's a little more of that, but So I kind of am nice in a smart alecky way of, what do you think is going to happen when you're the nighttime? I'll like underline it. I did. We had the job description out, and I said, nighttime on-call person. I said, and your first concern is that you're called on nights. I said, we've got a misunderstanding. And they said, well, they didn't tell me this at the onboarding. I said, okay, that's noteworthy. You didn't hear that from that. They might have assumed that the title of the position communicated that. And that is what I say. And when you're transparent and honest with people, because sometimes we want to beat around that. Then we go back and tell our boss, that's what the thing says, right? So, yeah, say it in there of, I'm having a hard time understanding why those two don't equate, right? And so tell me. And that's what the person did say. They didn't tell me this in training. They kind of pitched it in a really positive way. You only get called maybe once a month, and I'm getting called 3 times a week. And so I said, you know what? That's an honest feedback, right? If I got that and they told me this was this much of your job and it turns into this much, it's something you need to consider. And so now we know the facts are, is it's this much. Do you want to keep doing it for this long? And then what does that look like? So everybody has their side of the story. Again, not all CEOs are just trying to be out there just penny pinchers and making $1 off of broken backs. And not all direct service providers or employees are just jaded individuals who want to get money for doing nothing. And so when we come at this place of curiosity, again, I don't think you're trying to be mean or whatever, or threatening to me, because me triggering you starts to make me sound like I'm threatening. All of these things that scares me. And so saying things like that scares me a little bit if I'm triggering you. Is that just a word you use? Because I don't use it haphazardly, right? I don't know if that helps, but I try to be nice. I'm a nice smart aleck, yes. I've been thinking about a tagline for our business. I'll put that. How to become a nice smart aleck. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? That's a really great question. I hear that a lot, triggers and boundaries.
So as a leader or as a business owner, man, you've worked with a lot of different types of people, personality types, and so forth. So at what point do you reflect on your own actions and behaviors in terms of, are you participating in this communication breakdown or this negative culture that you may not intentionally be creating, or recognize that you are a part of the problem? So when we go back to the person who was dealing with, like, why did you not tell us, right?
Yes.
So just your demeanor, so many things play a part into how that comes across to someone.
Yep.
But, we work with all kinds of different people, and we have to take into account that their experiences are not the same as ours. So what
Absolutely.
triggers them is still valid, potentially, whether you agree with it being a trigger for
Yep.
yourself or not. So, at what point do you really need to self-reflect as opposed to try to encourage the other person not to
Yep.
work here anymore, or this is not a good
Yep.
fit, or something to that?
So the question was, like, at what point do you encourage self-reflection versus kind of taking on the task? Always, right? I always encourage a moment of, you know what, did that come off harsh? Because I didn't mean that to come off harsh. And so what we call that is external self-awareness. I am self-aware of how other people interpret me by reading faces. If I looked out here and you guys were all on your phone or turned around and eating, I would start to recognize that nobody wants to hear really what I'm saying, or that there's something else catching attention. And so I would start to have to really become self-aware of how I'm communicating and what I'm communicating. So it comes from another place of curiosity. I can't help but feel like you thought I was the bad guy here. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be assertive. I wanted to tell you, you cannot wear that outfit to work today, but I didn't want you to feel like I was judging you or your choices, right? And so I don't want that to come off that way. I'm sorry if it did. And you can't wear that anymore, or whatever that looks like. So I always encourage self-reflection, self-awareness training, emotional intelligence training for workplaces that is true self-awareness and emotional intelligence training on how to walk it out, right? Not just go home and meditate on it. That's helpful for some people, but we need lots of tools in our toolbox. And half of it is leaning on your other leadership teams, team members, right? I'm thinking about having this conversation. Does anybody have another way that we would have this conversation with the staff member, or think that it could go a different way? I want to brainstorm this out, especially if you are feeling uneasy about something, to listen to your gut, and then recognizing that you still need to do the task at hand. Yep.
I actually had a supervisor a long time ago, a few years ago, who had a very similar situation about the employee feeling triggered. And what I thought was actually really brilliant was the person said, basically, I keep hearing you say that you're triggered and what I'm saying and doing is affecting you. And right now we're not in the right space to have this conversation. So would it be all right with you if you were to go home later after you get off your shift, write down what exactly is it about what I'm saying or doing or my disposition that's impacting you, so we can actually have a thoughtful conversation
Yes.
about the trigger.
Yes.
Because a lot of people in the moment, they don't actually know what that deeper trigger is.
Of
So
course.
giving them the space without the threat of, we'll go home now and just, but like wait till the end of your shift, continue on doing your thing.
Yep.
You go home, really sit with this, and because I want to be able to help you, and you help me understand so we can work together.
Yes. And
Move over this trigger. So I thought just giving the person the opportunity to take time to just reflect on it was actually help the whole situation.
absolutely. So he was saying that giving that space when somebody is feeling triggered, part of that emotional intelligence piece is recognizing when you're talking about emotion and not the actual task at hand, right? We talk about that in relationships a lot, right? If I come home and I say, oh my gosh, the dishes are out on the counter again, right? All of a sudden, we're probably not talking about dishes, we're talking about household, right? So reading the room of what we're talking about, and if the emotion, I think that's another Simon Sinek piece, if the emotion is higher than a 5, we're probably talking about some feeling pieces about lots of different things rather than just the words that came out of my mouth or me. And so that's that one of those last pieces of critical feedback on how to give that, and we give that when our whole brain is on board, not when we're triggered and we're in that kind of fight, freeze. You have time? Yes.
Question about really the intersection between the skill set and the trust component.
Yes.
What I've noticed in previous positions is that even people that fall into that trust category, once they elevate into a position of authority or management, they are automatically catapulted out of that category, and now you don't trust you. You're a part of the
Yes.
system, and
Yep.
there's some business factors, even if you're intentional about promoting people and have developed some trust and safety. And so I'm curious how you kind of navigate that in a way that's effective, because I've seen one of two things happen. Either that person who has promoted into management starts to overcompensate
Yes.
in order to regain that trust, and now they're not holding the team members accountable.
Yep.
Or they're holding them accountable and now they're no longer trusted.
Yep.
So I'm curious what your thoughts
I love that. And so what we speak to is leadership and skill development when people are promoted. It happens so little that when somebody is, well, it happens all the time when somebody is good at their job, they're a great accountant, they're trustworthy within the agency, they have friends, they're a great accountant, those skills are strong, then they're promoted to manager accountant and have a team under them. Without any training on how to be an effective leader, that trust aspect doesn't carry the weight anymore, because they either start to overcompensate like I did when I became a psychologist and was like, this is how I'm going to be, or they start to micromanage. You have to do it the way I did it, and I'm a good accountant, and so you shall do it the exact way that I did it. I might as well do it instead of you doing it type of idea. And so this idea of training them into this embracing the trust and keeping that open. Things are going to have to change from you and your once peers. Now you're in the supervisory role. Some communication, those people aren't going to be privy to. How are you going to handle those conversations? What does that look like? And so it really looks like the culture of the agency understanding that that is a skill that can be built when, and it can be done really quickly and easily when that trust is already there, to not lose it. And then it sounds like that agency also needs to do some work on the trust of, you said they're part of the system now, right? If it is an us versus them already, and then somebody gets pulled over to the them side, and you're like, no, you've left us, we've got an issue already, right? And so that gets to be handled on the back end piece of how are we communicating? Are we always, does it feel like that? And then what support are we giving our people who want to move up in the agency? Yep. Very cool. Thank you, guys.
Very
I
good.
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
I'm gonna hold that for a minute.
Thank you.
Really appreciate Dr. Jacobs coming up from the South.
Yes,
She said
very
her
southern.
sister lives in Nashville. When she saw the advertisement, she's like, oh, my sister's going to be in Nashville, right?
I said I'm driving north for this
North
even.
for this event, yeah.
I'm in very southern Illinois.
Dr. Jacobs, how would people connect with you so we could follow up on questions and such?
I have my contact information on the back of the handout, and then I can pass out some cards too if there's not enough handouts to go around. But I'm on LinkedIn. I have my website there and my direct line phone number or email as well.
And she's coming back in August for another Ethos Power Lunch, so we appreciate that very much. Did everybody get a red ticket? We're going to do a little giveaway. If you didn't get a red ticket when you came in, just raise your hand. We can give you a red
Put
ticket.
you right on top.
That's awesome. So draw a ticket, and as you do that, 2 quick closing announcements, and these are big. Ethos Power Lunch for May, it's on May 15th. Our own Darla Harms is presenting on creating a leadership footprint. So you want to come back, go ahead and register. It's online for that. And then the newest announcement, I teased this a little bit last time we got together. We're having a Business at the Bistro after hours networking event. It's going to be on May 22nd. It'll be right over here at Seasoning Bistro in the private room. It is co-sponsored by the City of Marion and also Legence Bank. You get appetizers and drinks as part of the sponsorship, so there's no cost for you. But we only can take 40. And this is for entrepreneurs, their small business teams, and community leaders. It's live right now on our website. Go register. There's 40 spots. Once they're gone, they're gone. But there's no cost for that at all. It's a true after-hour networking event that you can meet other entrepreneurs, business leaders, and community leaders, and your work teams can reach out to, and mingle and mix with others. I think it's going to be really cool. I'm glad Seasoning Bistro, Legence Bank, and also City of Marion's willing to do this with us. So here you go. The number is
772-0616. Yay!
There you go. Awesome. Got a little giveaway for you. And hey, thank you all for being here. Please join us again for another event. And we'll see you next time.